And action! Hey everyone, it's DrRic. Zuri had a question about muscle growth and how long to expect before seeing muscle growth. Some of my patients will ask the same question, but they're kind of worded differently. How long before I see weight loss? But if this is the first time you're finding me, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and the alert button to find out when I do new videos. And share this with somebody who might be asking the same question. So, muscle growth. Let's just stick to it that way because there's too many other topics to hit. But muscle growth, I would expect, just to go straight to the summary, 3 to 4 months before I see a change. Now the question, it always is determined by some variables, and I picked out 5. The first variable that would determine how fast you see response is age. You probably can't see this, but I'll call them out. Age, whether you're high school or college level athlete, middle age, baby boomer, retired, I think that the ages will sometimes hold you to a certain amount of time before you really expect to see change. My athletes, my school age athletes, high school and college, because of hormonal waves being so surgy, I think they have the fastest responsiveness. Now, if you have a baby boomer that's retired and there's a great knowledge base that the muscle has of memory from before, and that age group is not too sick, then you should be able to see responsiveness, but it might take a little longer. And there's middle age and the couch potatoes. And then there's the parents. So it really depends on age. Depending on your bracket, I might say I expect 2 to 3 months versus 6 to 12 months. And that's where I'm going to jump down to diseases. It also is determined by, even if you're in those brackets, what kind of diseases you have. So first off, before I get to the diseases, if you are healthy in those brackets, then you should be able to hit that paradigm of 4 months before you notice something. You won't see massive changes, but you might see changes in your strength tolerance, the amount of weight you're doing, the tolerance for the class you're doing, the distance, or the personal record that you're hitting. Now, if you have a disease, and any age group can have a disease, if you have a disease, then you really have to control the disease first before you set out on this journey. And that's why you have to see your doc to either declare the disease and make sure that you understand what it is and we're on the same page, or to fix it a bit without necessarily just jumping to medicines, but get it set so you can go on and tackle the change in nutrition, exercise, sleep habit, and recuperation. If you don't have a doc, then see a doc, whether it's an MD, DO, or a naturopath or chiropractor. Get to see somebody. Even if it's a psychiatrist, get to see somebody to control your disease process first. I often say first you have to declare it, and that's usually with your initial visit and telling your story to the doc. Jumping back, if you have a really good nutrition practice, whether it's a vegetarianism person or a keto kind of practicing, or a paleo person, or just the vegan, it doesn't matter. Or fasting, intermittent versus fasting mimicking diet. It doesn't matter as long as you have a healthy nutrition practice, because what you do is don't vacillate during the time that you go through this 3 to 4 month burn. Stick with one author, stick with one practice. If you go back and forth, God bless you if you're successful, but if you go back and forth and you're not successful, which problem or nutrition practice do we blame it on? Because I don't want you, after the 3 to 4 month attempt and hopefully success, but if there is a setback, I don't want you to go back and do the same things you did the first time. It's kind of like that inevitable, I want to stop smoking, this is the way I did it before, it didn't work, why should you go back and just quit cold turkey again? You'll just end up with the same results. Think outside the box and get the added help. The other thing with nutrition, if you're going to stick with one author or stick with one practice, you always have to look for a deficiency. In Chicago, typically there's going to be a vitamin D deficiency. Now, vitamin D, if you take it and you take care of your deficiency, you might not notice a great change in your life, but sometimes B12, iron, iodine, magnesium, all those will provide you some better sleep, perhaps more energy, maybe a better working thyroid. So it's always important to declare that, and the only way to declare it is really to get testing. Blood testing should be adequate, and it should be covered under most insurances. If you don't have insurance or you have a big deductible, I think my usual suggestions would be most Americans should be on vitamin D, even if you work outside, especially if you're north of Georgia. Most Americans should be on some form of omega-3, whether it's fish oil, flaxseed, borage oil. It's up to you, but most of us should be on omega-3 because of the benefits. I think that most people that are trying to push the envelope should be on turmeric because I think turmeric helps with inflammation and I think it shortens recovery time, and I'll get to that in a second. And then depending on your nutritional practice, if you're a vegetarian, B12 and iron. If you're male, probably don't need iron as much. If you're more paleo, you might want to go with a balance of fiber. It depends on the practice, but take care of your deficiencies, stick with a nutritional practice, and attack that thing. Be committed. Usually the 3 to 4 month mark will be seasonal, and during that season you'll have one bumper crop, or at least you'll have a grocery store that keeps its shelves and its aisles about stocked the same, so you shouldn't have to vary your practice. And then usually at the end of the season, the stores will get different shipments, and then you can maybe consider a switch if you didn't get what you want, or just a hold until, I usually say in the winter times, don't continue on. We got too many holidays, too much stress. The pickings in the grocery store are kind of slim unless you import them 2,000 miles away. So just get your benefits, hold steady, continue, don't gain too much weight, and then when spring comes, blast again and attack another 3 to 4 months change. The next would be delayed onset muscle soreness and your tolerance to that. I have a video, I believe, on delayed onset muscle soreness, and I'll put it down below. But if you're a beginner, you're gonna hurt a lot, and that's expected, right? Tendinitis, bursitis, to a certain degree, arthritis can come up when you move a joint, when you get moving. Asthma, maybe a little heart failure, that can happen too. You have to be very careful, and again, that's why it's important to get cleared by your docs. But average injury that is tolerated by any re-exacerbation or reattempt into exercise, I'd say 72 hours is good enough. If you have more pain and immobility because of your pain, altered gait because of your pain, can't lift your arms because of your pain, past 72 hours, that's probably pushing too hard. And you might have to get into a physical therapist or a kinesiology specialist or a chiropractor to kind of figure out, is there a problem with a local joint or a regional, say if your shoulder is impinging all the time, do we have to work on scapula stability? If your IT band is always an issue, do we have to put an insert in your shoe, or do you have to work on, if it's knee pain, do we have to work on quad strength or hamstring flexibility? So all those things should be entertained if you're having prolonged pain. Delayed onset muscle soreness, I think, is reasonable for 2 days, and that's it. Then you can attack those weights again. Now, if you look at the interval I mentioned before in another video, most people can, if you're lucky, you can exercise every day, every other day. If you're average American working 50 hours a week, I expect 90 minutes a week. And will you get great results with that? Probably not initially, but if you can get to a cruising altitude where you can tolerate the pain, you can push when you get to exercise to the point of enough discomfort, tendinitis, muscle soreness for about 3 days, then it'll dovetail you to work out about 3 times a week. 15 to 30 minutes 3 times a week doesn't seem like much, but it should be enough. I don't think you have to rob your daily activities, take away from parenting, take away from your job just to try to get muscle growth. I think there is a compromise. And then finally, knowledge base. So knowledge base is very important because I'll have some people who can watch YouTube videos and say, that looks cool, I just do that, it's so easy. But now, watching a video, hearing a specialist on a video tell you how to move, and then actually seeing you do the movement, that's 2 different things. If you can get by and you don't get injured and you can see improvement or some kind of gains, then cool. But sometimes it's important to consider having a coach who is well versed with a lot of ins and outs, plateaus, strengths, weaknesses of a certain practice. You get to your summit faster because you can use their knowledge base, pick their brains as far as, should I do it this way? How's my body tolerate this? Is my form properly using this technique? So I wanted to also show you, Zuri, In that case, it is important to seek a coach to advise. I'm trying to be your coach, but for example, with dumbbells versus barbells, I think a lot of people will usually think doing a barbell movement would be adequate, and if you just follow whatever you see on YouTube, it should be fine. This is a dumbbell, and you would see that with this kind of movement, which is really, this is not a movement. I'm just trying to describe the difference between these two things. This is a kettlebell, and this is a typical dumbbell. So you can use this for any kind of movements you want to kind of develop your regional strength. But sometimes by having a coach, if we keep with a certain movement, this is a forward raise, usually for deltoids. If you isolate, I'm moving too much, I'm rocking my body, but I'm just trying to show you a point. There's that. And sometimes to instill a little more challenge muscle and maybe move muscle further, there's this thing, which is a kettlebell, which kettlebells kind of throw your center off, so you have to work more muscle groups to control this same movement of the same weight. Kettlebells sometimes can be used as dumbbells if you want it to be strict, but this is the beauty of having a coach. If you are finished with strict, then you can kind of add a little flair into it and see if you can pull in more muscle movement. More muscle movement means other joints get worked out, and it usually adds to your proprioceptive skills, and dynamics of muscle and joint movement will be improved if you add proprioception there. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of what I would expect if you're going to invest in this. Also, again, ultimately what I expect if you look for a coach of some sort. If you get injured or if you hit any of the stumbling blocks, can't see muscle growth visibly. Sometimes you won't see muscle growth visibly, just be a little tighter in your shirts. Or you might start to see your waistline shrink. If you don't notice muscle growth, but you just notice your waistline shrinking, you're still getting gains. The gain is that you're able to burn off your depot fat. Eventually, when you have less and less fat, muscle will probably push maybe in the next 3 or 4 months. But be patient, watch for injury. Don't be shy about reading on your own, and again, look for a coach that's affordable and that would mesh with you as far as pushing you to the max. So, good question, Zuri. Hopefully this gives you a lot of good feedback. Anybody else, put your comments down below, and maybe Zuri can get some help with that. Otherwise, I'll see you in the clinic.